agencies here, that is usually the practice, is to make sure that the person's secure until, even though a lot of people say, hey, it appears that the person is dead, why are you doing that? But usually procedure, I know we review, we attend training as prosecutors too. We've seen training, I've seen trainings where individuals sometimes they will fake that they're deceased and could still cause harm. So a lot of people will share that concern thinking, hey, this is very unreasonable under the circumstances, but until you have a verification from medics and other medical personnel, you don't know. So they're trying to secure and make sure that there's no other weapons on the individual.
Have you guys determined which officer or officers fired the fatal shots?
That again will come from the results of the lab reports we still need.
What can you tell us about the officers' injuries, if any?
Do we have a report on that?
I haven't heard about that.
That's a good question. I can look that up. Nobody asked me that, so I'll work on that for next week.
Are there confirmed injuries?
From what I understood, that there was. That's unconfirmed though. But I'll try and find that out for you for next week.
With evidence being placed at top priority for the Washington State Crime Lab, was that asked by the Special Investigative Unit to be done? Did you guys request that?
We always ask to be the top priority on any case. Obviously, you imagine this, Chris. So a family member of yours meets with an intruder in their house and they are killed, and we don't know who did it, but we need that forensic evidence so we can try and track that person down. We ask the crime lab, please run these forensic as quickly as possible. We want to be hot on the trail of the suspect. So we ask all the time to be at the top priority. And in this case as well, we ask to be a top priority. So I am sure at some point in the state of Washington government, somebody granted that wish. And where exactly that came from, I don't know. I can't confirm that. But somebody with some influence granted that wish, and it's at the top now.
Because as I understand, a lot of evidence gets backed up. Sometimes when it goes to the crime lab, it takes weeks, if not months, to get anything back. Sometimes maybe a year or two. How quickly will this speed up this process, knowing that you guys are the top priority for evidence?
Hard to put an exact date on that, but I think instead of months, weeks. So it may be 4 or 5 weeks, but not the months that we'd normally wait.
Ken, Sean, just to clarify, as far as the coroner's inquest, did the coroner ask permission, or did he give you a heads up prior to announcing the special coroner's inquest?
A coroner's inquest is called by the coroner. They don't have to give me notice prior to. I didn't receive notice prior to. I heard about it in the media, and then I did receive an email from Mr. Blaisdell indicating that he had made the decision. I think I talked to several media members that were here last week, had indicated they'd received confirmation that it wasn't just a consideration, but actually that's the direction we're going. Part of that is, once that notice goes to us, we compile a witness list of individuals that we feel are going to be pertinent for making that determination, and then it'll proceed forward with that inquest.
I mean, would it have been important to get that heads up first before it's announced?
Well, I'd obviously certainly like to know the thought process, because obviously we knew various options that we have within our office, and we recognize that, hey, if there's a question for determining some of these factors, sometimes a coroner's inquest is helpful, but really the three issues that a coroner's inquest is trying to answer is, who is responsible for causing the death, who died and by what means, and who is it someone that's criminally liable for those actions. So I think really it's going to come down to having all those reports back from the lab, being able to determine, hopefully we should be able to determine and identify which weapon had the fatal shot once we're able to evaluate the pathologist report, the crime lab report. Sometimes we don't have that. Sometimes guns are similar and you're not going to know specifically from which specific firearm it came from. I believe these are all the same caliber. All three firearms from the officers. We've had that issue come up in Pasco before, and they were not able to determine the specific firearm. I don't know if that'll be the case this time.
Do you happen to know the departmental issue firearm for Pasco? Is it the same as Kennewick?
I believe it's a .45 caliber. It's a Glock Model 21.
Mr. Lattin, I was wondering, some of my listeners have asked the question that Kennewick Police and Franklin County and Pasco Police and Richland PD all work very closely together. How do you know that your investigation is going to be pure, is going to be unquestioned, and how can you relate that to the public, that there is no worry that there is some sort of hand-holding going across the river here?
So first of all, the community does put a lot of trust in us. But you have to understand that none of these investigators are going to put their own careers in jeopardy for someone else when it comes to the integrity of a report, of an investigation. It is what it is. I've mentioned this before. Mr. Zambrano Montes made decisions that day. The 3 officers made decisions that day, resulting in this act. We're here to collect the facts and figure out what happened. It'll be up to Mr. Sant and whoever else he wants to refer to make the decision on was it justified or not. We're going to produce an impartial report that's full of integrity because that's who we are. We are not, regardless of how close they are, we're going to put together an impartial report because that's the right thing to do. That's what the citizens pay us to do, and we are not going to jeopardize our own integrity, our own trust that we have within the community, and our jobs, our livelihoods, to cover up for some other officers' actions.
Would you characterize the relationship between Pasco PD and Kennewick PD as a close relationship?
We can say that with all of our Mid-Columbia law enforcement agencies, from Prosser to Connell to the Tri-Cities. Everybody in Benton Franklin County works well together. When I say that, I mean they share resources. They share information on criminal cases. And that's good. That's how good stewards are of the taxpayers' money in both counties. But nonetheless, we can put together an ethical report, investigation on this, because it is what it is. And the officers made decisions, and they're going to have to live with those decisions. Mr. Montes made decisions that day, and so that's what resulted in this act.
Has the DOJ indicated to you at all, I asked this question last week, but if there's going to be any look back at the shootings preceding this shooting, in total, these 4 or 5 occurrences?
They may. I don't know. That's really not a part of our Special Investigations Unit investigation on this case. They're looking at just at this case. That might be a bigger question after a decision is made.
Thank you.
After the second autopsy, is the body will be released to the committee?
We've released our interest. As the prosecutor, usually that's coordinated by the coroner's office. They've requested that as soon as possible, and I wanted to make sure that I had input from our federal partners at our U.S. Attorney's Office as well as at the State Attorney General's office. Once I had that, I have no more interest. I don't think we need to hold the body, but if the family wants to conduct another autopsy, we certainly don't want to interfere with that. So I'll await that to occur, and we'll be ready to receive the pathology reports that will come forward after that as well.
So that may happen soon?
I would assume so. Usually, if there is a decision to be made, they usually try to do that as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Does the pending civil lawsuit from the family impact at all how you interact with the family, how you interact with the public, how much you're able to speak now that there is that pending lawsuit? Has that affected you at all?
Well, they haven't named me in the lawsuit. They've named, I think, the city of Pasco. Really, I'm not the one that committed any acts. Our office's job is, just like in any other case, to review the facts and evidence and make a charging decision. So we're going to do that regardless. If people want to file lawsuits, people have sued the county in the past. That doesn't change our course of business. Sometimes lawsuits produce that they might change policy and procedures with various departments throughout the county, but for the most part, that doesn't have an impact at all on how we review a case and how we intend to proceed forward. Obviously, we want to get this right, just like every other case.
In terms of speaking, though, with the family, has the family been as forthcoming since the lawsuit has been filed?
I have not spoken personally with the family. They've kind of communicated through others, and we're certainly willing to meet with them when they're ready. Usually that takes place after it comes to our office. I could almost say, I'd like to say that it's happened in every time, and I'm just trying to think if sometimes we might have met the family before, and I think actually we have. We have on occasion, at their request, they've come and met with us, and we basically share with them one-on-one, because I think the family involved needs to have that where they feel that they could share and be open without public view, and I think that's important, and we're certainly open for that, but I think I could say, generally speaking, usually that meeting takes place after the reports come to my office and they know that the decision now is at my office, and that's usually where we have the meeting, and we discuss with them and try to keep them in the loop, and sometimes we share information with them before it's released to the media, just because we want to keep them apprised earlier, so they're not reading about it or hearing about it later on.
With this investigation going for several months, will these 3 officers be on paid administrative leave for that entire time?
That's a question for the city of Pasco. We have nothing to do with their current status. We are the criminal investigation portion of this.
Have
you guys been able to determine if Mr. Zambrano Montes hit any passing vehicles with rocks either before police arrived or when they were on scene?
So, excellent question, and I'll try and work on that for next week, so we can, I think that's probably information that we can get for you. I just don't have it right now.
Have you determined if he understood English enough to comply with the officers?
So we're working to verify that. That'll be part of the investigation.
And you said there's going to be ongoing media briefings. Are we planning to have this now every week?
So right now the plan is for next Thursday, 1:30. So same time, same location. I hope to have more information. You know, as I said, the information is coming back pretty quickly right now. At some point, it's going to slow down, and it may not be feasible. Right now, it's reasonable to do this again next week.
Do you guys know how long he was staying at the mission for, and is there any indication of where he was sleeping in those, 2 weeks that you guys have really no idea what he was doing?
You know, unfortunately, there's a lot of our, I won't say a lot, there are many of our population that float between the mission, sleeping on people's couches, sleeping in their car, sleeping just out in public areas, in the back of commercial businesses, in dumpsters. It's a sad situation, but that's where they reside, either by choice or by circumstance. And so we just need to know what was he doing the days, hours leading up to this event.
Do you know how long he was actually at the mission for them?
No.
Have the 3 officers involved retained civilian counsel? And Sean, is that something that other officers who have been involved in recent officer-involved shootings have done?
Retain civilian counsel, or is that?
Yes, we'll have the 3, there was kind of a 2-part question. Have the 3 officers involved on that, and then have the officers in the recent other officer-involved shooting, is that something they've done?
I think in many cases, the officers are members of the FOP, Fraternal Order of Police, and usually they have legal services provided through them. I have not been contacted specifically from any of their attorneys. If they have retained attorneys, I haven't been contacted by those specific attorneys yet. But that's certainly not unheard of, because that, obviously you could imagine it comes with the job. From my understanding from other cases, officers participate in programs that do offer legal services. So I assume once it gets to my office, I'll probably become aware of that situation.
Do any of those officers have previous charges against them for excessive force?
So that's not a part of our criminal investigation. That would be a question for the city of Pasco, because that's an administrative issue. We're just focusing on the criminal investigation here with this homicide. Other questions?
What resources are available to the officers right now as they're on administrative leave?
Excellent question. So the Tri-City region does provide a peer support. These are peer counselors that have gone through specialized training. I can tell you that the history of that, Captain Mike Cobb with the Richland Police actually originated that group, he and his wife. And so that peer support is provided to them, and is generally spelled out in most everybody's policies and procedures as a resource for them. And of course, most cities offer for all their employees counseling as a part of their benefits package. So I'm sure that's available to them as well.
Have you guys been able to determine if Mr. Zambrano Montes battled any mental health issues, or has mental health come up during this investigation as well?
So I can't answer that question right now. That is part of what we need to know, again, in these hours, days, weeks leading up to it. I think I can safely say his action's not normal. Why? Was it because he's under the influence of something? Toxicology report will bear that out. Or was there some other long-term mental issues? And we'll need to talk to family members to find out if that was the case. So we can safely say the actions were not normal, not reasonable. None of you would act that way. So why? And so that's an excellent question that we need to answer.
When do you expect that toxicology to be released?
That's being done by the state crime law. I hate to put a number, a date on that. They're working on that as quickly as they can, sooner rather than later.
Week? 2 weeks?
I don't want to box them in. They will get very upset with me if I do that. Yes, sir.
Can you walk us through quickly his prior arrests, prior interaction?
No, again, as I mentioned earlier, was he here legally in the country? Did he have prior or in place protection orders? Any of his past criminal history does not have a bearing on, a pertinent bearing on this case. It'll be a part of the investigation, but doesn't change what happened on February 10th. So that's what we focus on. That's what we focus on.
Sorry, I think you arrested him before.
That's not information I have that I can verify right now. But just please know, regardless of anything he had done in the past, we focus on the actions of that day. That is what is being investigated. That's what will be sent to Mr. Sant for review.